Thank you, Ann. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. And we're very grateful to the Green Army for calling us together for very important discussions and to look at the environment, very important moral issues. Let us pray. Let us pause for a moment of silence to remember at this very moment and in this place we are in God's presence. Let us reflect on Psalm 24. The Lord's are the earth and its fullness, the world and those who dwell in it. For he founded the earth upon the seas and established it upon the rivers. Lift up, O gates, you lintels, reach out, you ancient portals, that the King of glory may come in. Loving and faithful God, you have given us this earth. We are called by you to be good stewards of creation, and in so doing we honor you and protect the gifts that you have given. Lord God of mercy, we ask you to forgive us as a human family for the ways that we have not cared for the environment and we have misused or neglected your gifts. For this, we are sorry. And we come to you today to ask for wisdom to see your hand in creation that mirrors you and your love. We ask you for perseverance to care well for the earth and all that you have given to us. We ask you for courage that we may speak out in a prophetic way and to awaken others to this need. And we also ask and pray for boldness that we will not just speak, but also act to preserve the gifts that you have given. We are concerned as we see in this area the disappearance of our coast that threatens life and livelihood. Give us wisdom and courage. And Lord God, lastly, we are mindful that we are 9 years after Hurricane Katrina. Give eternal rest to those who have died in this hurricane, those who are rebuilding their lives. Give them courage for the poor and the vulnerable, and those whose lives are dependent upon nature. Give them courage. Thank you for your gifts, and make us good stewards of all that you have given. We ask this for you are God, living and reigning forever and ever. Amen.
And now we'll have the Reverend Tyron Edwards from Zion Travelers Baptist Church. I think he's probably familiar to most people in this room. He has been a tireless advocate for people who are in the bullseye of environmental destruction.
Let us pray. Oh, dear gracious and eternal God, we thank you for your traveling grace that brought us along life's dangerous highway to this place of fellowship and gathering. We ask that your Holy Spirit continue to guide us, dear God. Dear God, we ask that you give us your divine armor, that we can stand the evilness that's taken place in Washington and the state capitol against the most vulnerable people your creation, dear God. Dear God, you give us the earth, dear God, and made all of us to it. But God, we ask that you give us the boldness that we need, the courage that we need, dear God, that we will withstand. Dear God, we thank you for those from St. Rose and those from Current School and those from throughout the state of Louisiana together here, dear God. Let us come together as one body, dear God, strong, dear God. Let us continue to let those of us who are strong bear the infirmity of other weak, dear God. Let all of us continue to be encouragement to each other. Dear God, we thank you for General Honore and all other both soldiers and all the organizations, advocacy, the Sierra Club, the Louisiana Bucket Brigade, and the Advocates for Human Rights, and all of those who have come together, dear God. And we come on the shoulder of all those heroes and sheroes, dear God, who have laid their life down, dear God, that there would be a world where there be justice for all. So God, let us not come, dear God, as people without hope, dear God. Give us that unshakable faith, dear God. Remind us of your word, dear God, that faith is the substance of things hoped for, and evidence of things not seen. But let us not just come together with prayer, dear God, but let us be doers of your word, dear God. And let all of us take on a banner of environmental justice, that we will create a beloved community where our unborn children can breathe fresh air, where unborn children have to worry about toxic dump in their community, God. So give us the courage that all of us need. Now, God, may the words of my mouth, but the meditation of all of our collective heart be acceptable in thy sight. And all of the redeemed say amen. Amen.
And now we're going to have both opening statements and a review of the last several months of the Green Army. We're going to lead with General Russell Honore, who is our host of this breakfast. Please join me in thanking General Honore for his past contributions during the GreenARMY.
And thanks to Ann and all the volunteers. And as we used to say back in the country at Xavier University, Xavier University, deep in the country, for allowing us to be here today, and to our pastors for bringing us the Word of God this morning, that reflect on this great gift we've been given here to live in this world by God's creation and what we have done to it collectively. Just by coming here this morning, we've had some impact on the environment. I'm often asked by people up north to join various organizations talking about climate change. And what I often tell the bishop is, I would be concerned about climate change, but we're standing in oil. This is much more of an immediate problem we have in Louisiana, because we have given the world and this nation a great gift that was given to us, our natural resources. Our great gift in Louisiana, I think our first great gift is our people. Our people that make a unique culture, that people from around the world come to enjoy and embrace, and all leave with impressed because of the people in this room, the people of Louisiana, and the culture that's been created. That culture and our people are threatened. We're threatened by the impact of that gift. The expiration of that gift out of the ground has an enormous impact on our state. And as a result of that, it's had a significant contribution on even the size of our state. Our state is being depleted by coastal erosion, attributed much by the canals that were dug with the intent of exploration that would never close, that allowed salt water to come into our state. I can take you to out down by Pointe-aux-Chenes, and down in Terrebonne Parish, just south of Honore, an Indian tribe that still lives there. 40 years ago, they used to see alligators on the Pointe-aux-Chenes Bayou at this place I stood, about 20 miles south of Honore. Now they see sharks. So what people are professing about and writing great papers and making great documentaries, we're already experiencing. We saw the impact of Katrina, didn't we? We saw the impact of Gustav. We've seen the impact of Isaac. And unnamed storms to come that continue to assault our coastline, and we have destroyed what God gave us. Because it's God gave us the weapons, and they're being destroyed. We can come further up north into Plymouth Parish, where we have numerous refineries that do not have state-of-the-art 21st century monitoring systems. And we can take that on into St. Bernard Parish, where we don't have 21st century monitoring systems, where our people are getting sick from the pollution that's coming out of these plants. Do we need that gas coming out of those plants? Yes. I need the gas in my engine, and I need the oil in my, the gas in my tank and the oil in my engine. That's how I got here this morning. But it does not give them the right to pollute our air. It does not give them the right to pollute our ground. And we've asked you to come here today. Just in those two examples, we can come on into the city of New Orleans, where we're fighting pollution issues. The recovery of New Orleans was a great thing in the last 9 years. But what is also uncovered is that we know now what we didn't know 50 years ago. And we did some construction in this city 50 years ago on ground that was questionable. We have the ability to test now and know there's lead and arsenic in some of this ground because there were previous dumps. We cannot continue to build on those places unless we go through complete remediation of that ground. And we can go across the lake into St. Tammany. But as you drive across the lake, you can remember 20 years ago what happened to that lake. You couldn't fish in it, you couldn't get in it. Why? Because people had convinced the government of the state of Louisiana that it was good for the economy for exploration to happen in that lake. They almost destroyed it. But what happened was citizens, just like you, as we sit here today, stood up and said no. And they used the power that has been given to us in this democracy for 238 years. They used the power of the people to assemble, to get a voice. And they went to the state capitol. And that lake today, because of their work, a great example for all of us in this room, you see people fishing in that lake. But they almost destroyed it for the purpose of saying, well, it's good for the economy. If everything was good for the economy, we would invite the terrorists here. Because they can say they're good for the economy. Everything's not good for the economy. It's good for the people who are extracting this natural resources, but they're not all good. And you cross the lake, and you get into St. Tammany. And you know what we want to do? That's a tranquil place that has not suffered from the impact of exploration. And they want to drill there. And they will find a way because the state law allowed them to do it. And the legislators in this state want them to do it because they give donations to the legislators. They have hijacked our democracy. That's right. And you can go to St. Tammany. Make your way to Baton Rouge. Issues in Baton Rouge. Where is Hayes Town? Stand up, Hayes. A volunteer. Started a movement to save the water in Baton Rouge in 5 parishes called the Southern Hill Aquifer. The same one that they want to tap into in St. Tammany. Where one company used 22 million gallons of drinking water a day. They are right on the banks of the Mississippi River, but they refuse to use river water. They refuse to use river water because they say they got a right to that water and they will see us in court. I say, I will not see you in court, but me and our people will see you at your front gate. And you can go north of Baton Rouge into Baker. Well, we tried to pass a law that says basically people at the local level ought to be able to decide what comes in their community. Well, we've got a company out of out of Colorado, that has come to Louisiana and given themselves a name, the Louisiana Land Company. They've never run a dump before in their life. But the Louisiana DEQ gave them a permit to open a dump in Baker, the vicinity of Baker, Louisiana. We don't need a dump there. Why they did it? They did it because they could do it. The mayor of Baton Rouge said no. We went to court. Guess what the judge said? Yes. That judge is running for office this fall. That's how this works. And you can go back down on the bayou to Assumption Parish to Bayou Corn. We had legislation in to say, hey, we need to control where we're going to deal with these salt domes. Big pushback. What we did get out of legislation on that particular action was we got a law passed that they would pay people replacement price for their homes as opposed to current value. We had to go in on our knees and say, look what happened in New Orleans. You tried to pay people current value. It doesn't work. You got to pay them replacement value if you want them to move on. It didn't happen. We got some value out of the law from the Lake Panua, where the Chico Aquifer is. The Chico Aquifer served over 12 parishes water. They want to go in on top of Lake Panua, which sit on top of the Chico Aquifer, and drill some more. We got an agreement there that pushed back and said, hey, we're going to do the equivalence of an environmental impact statement. Well, we won't willy-nilly go in there and break that aquifer, that salt dome like we did in Bayou Corn. Bayou Corn is destroyed. Next to Bayou Corn is Grand Bayou. You never heard about it. Community is gone. And if we get the worst case scenario and the entire dome subside at Bayou Corn, it will get into the bayou itself and it's going to make its way in Lake Barrett. I can guarantee you a president of the United States will be talking about this at the White House when it happens. And we allowed that to happen. Our state government allowed that to happen. So people ask me all the time, Gerald, why are you involved with this Green Army stuff? You've got other things you can do. How can I not be involved with it? I spent 37 years, 3 months, and 10 days. Defending this country and spent 9.5 years overseas describing to people how democracy ought to work. And we come back to our state to see how our democracy has been hijacked by oil and gas. I can take you to Alexandria, where in Alexandria we've got a community that's split by 2 creosote plants. One makes the poles for telephone poles, the other one make cross ties for the railroad track. They split the plant up, owned by the same man, so they could meet state and federal rules for the release of poisons into the air. But all they did was split it by a short distance, gave it 2 different addresses. Ladies and gentlemen, that is wrong. It's wrong against nature and it's wrong against man. Because the people, we still don't have a right to say no when coming in the community. Houma, oil capital of Louisiana. Oil capital of Louisiana. The people of Houma said no, do not put an injection well in our city. Guess what the Louisiana legislature said? Oh yeah, they can. They went to court. State Supreme Court of Louisiana said yes, you can, because state law says you can. You think we got any traction during the legislature, John? Talking to them, they laughed at us when we brought this up. That we would actually pass laws that would control what oil and gas was doing. No. We got turned back, we came close. I'll leave it to John to give you some details, John Barry to give you some details on the lawsuit with the Kosovo. But we jumped from there and we go to Mossville. Mossville is in Lake Charles. The idea around Mossville, there are no birds in Mossville. It is surrounded by 11 chemical plants. And we have just approved another chemical plant to go in there from South African oil. The common name you hear is Sassel. I refuse to say Sassel in any of my deliberations. I say South African oil. Yes. Just like I will not say BP, I say British Petroleum. Because there's a model here. When that CEO from British Petroleum got some heat on him, what did he do? He got on his airplane and he flew home. That's the same thing South African oil will do when they destroy Mossville and they have a major impact on the health of the people of Louisiana. Ladies and gentlemen, we've tried legislation on all that. We had some success, but we got a long way to go. Because we think people have a human right, a God-given right, to clean air. Safe water. Health and human services for the state of Louisiana. Told the people of Mossville, yeah, the water is a little brown and it smells a little bit, but it's okay. That's what they told the people of Mossville. He said the color come from a little iron and the smell come from a little magnesium. How do you like magnesium and iron in your drink? We've changed that though. And it shows that there's a change coming. We challenged that parish council. And guess what? The people of Mossville, as of about 60 days ago, got running clean water. And we didn't go to court. I may have, and I know how I missed some of the hot spots we're working on, but literally there are too many to mention. But I want to put a marker on the ground. In the next 60 days, we're going to take a stand. We're the oldest city in this part of the country, and we ought to be the first to make a stand on what's happening around two places. We're not going to put a school on a dump. Y'all with me on that? And by the time we're over with, there's a place I haven't mentioned yet, St. Rose. It's next to the Destrehan Plantation, where my roots come from. Right next to the Destrehan Plantation. Many of the people here today are going to talk. But we're going to take a stand because the state has disrespected the people of St. Rose. They send a machine there that does not level the amount of poison that the people say. People get sick. They throw up their food. They have eyes that water. They have headaches. They go to the doctor and the doctor said, hey, go change your lifestyle. That's what they're told. The company continues to operate. The EPA has not responded to us. We've asked them time and again. This has been going on all summer. We're going to take a stand at St. Rose, and I promise you before this is over with, the world will know where St. Rose is. I know we're on the right course. As Bishop just a little while ago, the Pope wrote a letter that said we've got to do better. We've got to protect our environment. So the Pope said it. You know it. Now let's do it.
Just could have imagined that when he came into the streets in New Orleans during Katrina, that would only be his very first steps in helping to save this state. It is an honor to be a part of this. And now I'm very honored also to introduce John Berry, who, as I'm sure most of you know, is one of the architects of the lawsuit on behalf of the Flood Protection Authority, suing the oil and gas companies for destroying our state, carving up our coastline even when they knew that it was harmful. This act was extremely important to the Green Army over the course of the last year. For while we are all dealing with individual battles in St. Rose and in Mossville and with the schools, it helped us all to be able to come together on one issue. And I will let John Berry talk about that, and please thank him for his contribution.
The first thing I want to say is, well, first I want to thank you all for coming. And I want to thank the hosts very much. I think this is an extraordinary turnout, much more than I expected, and probably more than a lot of those committee expected. And that is an extraordinarily positive thing. The next thing I want to say is I'm never, ever again going to follow Russell. Not when everybody's going to get up and get their coffee in seconds. I do not have that ability that the general has. I'm going to talk about some facts and some truth. You know, I was asked to review the legislative session, and there are no moral victories in politics. There are no moral victories in politics. However, there are building blocks. Some of you may know that, you know, professionally I'm an historian. I can tell you there's hardly a major movement in the history of this country or any country that, you know, when an idea first surfaced, that it took hold. It takes work, a lot of work, and it takes some time. They used to say, not so long ago, that the flag of Texaco flies over the Louisiana Capitol. And when we started this legislative session, we were facing that history. And I can tell you, for months prior to the session, I went around the state talking to editorial boards and newspapers, talking to individual legislators, and we made tremendous progress specifically on the issue of the lawsuit, but more generally as well on just the idea of whether this state is supposed to be run by oil and gas or by the people who live here. I can tell you that there is not a single newspaper in the state of Louisiana that took an editorial position on the lawsuit that did not support the lawsuit. Let's talk about Lake Charles, Lafayette, Houma, places like up in Monmouth, pretty far from the coast. Can't get much further from the coast and still have a daily newspaper. And that was an enormous progress. It's a change of tone. Secondly, when we started this legislative, when we first filed the lawsuit, Gary Graves, who's now running for Congress, vote against him, said he was 1,000% certain the legislature would crush the lawsuit. As we went into the legislative session, those numbers changed. And we were actually pretty confident going in that we had not only that we had an excellent chance of being successful, but that we would be successful in defeating the legislation against us. As it turns out, there were 19 bills filed, each of them taking a different angle of attack on the lawsuit. We killed 18 of them. One of them did get through, but they had to make so many maneuvers and manipulate the process so much, pulling it from one committee where we had where we had the votes to defeat it, at the last second putting it in another committee, revising it, doing all this stuff, that the law as it's passed is so deeply flawed, the lawyers are extremely confident they will defeat that law. They will have it ruled. Either that it doesn't apply to the flood authority or that it's unconstitutional. In fact, the manipulation of a process was so bad, there's already a totally unrelated law, totally different issue, but this other state court has already ruled this other law unconstitutional because of the way the process was manipulated. It wasn't half as bad as what they did on us. Now, that doesn't mean that the lawsuit is going to go forward even if that process, even if we win in court on the law. There's a remaining issue of whether or not the governor has been trying to replace all the board members who support the lawsuit, and whether or not he can gain control of the board. That fight is going on right now. And that's a tough fight. But the basic message here in terms of the legislature, we did have some victories. You had some victories. You had some victories. As the general already referred to, Corn, Lake Ventura, I can tell you that the oil and gas industry, I know their lobbyists, I know the head of their trade association, stuff like that. We joke, we shake hands, we sort of laugh a little bit. Both of us, not too friendly but on the surface we're friendly. I can tell you they never worked as hard, ever, before as they worked this year. And they did not, I can tell you that they did not consider themselves having a successful session. They had to create, you know what you politicians talk about, grassroots and astroturf. And politicians know the difference between grassroots and astroturf. They had to create a couple organizations of astroturf to sort of match the Green Army. They were holding luncheons to get people to come where they, number one, gave away a free lunch, and number two, gave away a chance at $1,000 just to get people to come to the lunch to sign up. I wish we had that kind of money. We had it. But the main message is that I want to tell you, there were steps forward in this legislative session. As I said earlier, I'm a historian professionally, and I can tell you history doesn't just happen. It doesn't happen. People make history. And the real history of this legislative session is going to be made by you in this room going forward into the future. Whether what happened this past year turns into building blocks, it generates more political pressure on the institutions that are not doing what they should be doing, or whether it dissipates. This is a democracy, and that means it's up to you. So I would urge you, make some history. And remember it when elections come.
For anyone who doesn't have a seat, please feel free to come to this middle table, all right? We're all friendly here. You can walk around and get coffee, come and sit down. I would like to introduce Kim Noble from Green for All, who has put down her phone so somebody can now tweet about whatever amazing thing she's going to say. Thank you so much, Kim, for being here.
Good morning, everyone. You can follow the tweets I'm doing at Green for All, on Twitter. So I'm trying to do the best I can. I'm still a novice at it. Thank you for the introduction, Ann. And it is just so wonderful to be with all of you this morning. You can't hear me. Wow. How about this? Is that better? Okay. All right, I can talk loud. Again, my name is Kim Noble. I'm with Green for All, and it's my pleasure to be with you today. This is just a wonderful gathering. I mean, this is a packed room. Have you taken a look around to see all the wonderful faces here? It's just amazing to be here for reflection, looking at the 9th year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and just a wonderful story of resiliency here, but also a story of hope. And so again, for me, it's personally gratifying just to be among you today. Again, I'm with Green for All, and when we were told about this event a few months back, we were like, wow, this is wonderful. We really got to find some way to fund an event like this. So we went out and got some money. And we are so glad that we got someone else to buy into it, and they said, yeah, let's make this happen. We want to be with you and the Louisiana Bucket Brigade, and also the Green Army, and behind its shared vision of clean air, you know, safe water, clean water, and healthy communities, and we believe in that. Again, we're from Green for All, and we're a national organization. We're based out of Oakland, California, so I bring greetings from our folks there. I'm also based in Washington, D.C. I'm in our policy shop, and we work with a lot of organizations, civic organizations, environmentalists, college students at HBCUs, civic rights groups. We do quite a bit, and we come together in a collaborative fashion of how we can make things better. So at Green for All, we have what we call a climate campaign, climate change campaign. And General Honore mentioned that, you know, when you're in the trenches and you're thinking about the day in and day out struggles, climate change really is in the forefront of what you're thinking about. And I get that, I do. But we also want to bring home that climate change does have some impact on what you're doing here locally. I mean, the work that you're doing here is amazing. Amazing, I can't say it enough. How you have the initiatives here to go into the St. Rose community. Shout out to your folks over there. And the wonderful work that you're doing there. I mean, when I heard about the air that you're breathing and that it's, you know, it's a foul chemical odor, I'm like, what? You gotta be kidding. But you're here today. And I commend you on that. Thank you so much for showing up. So we want to make sure that as Green for All, we take a collective effort in making sure that the legislators know that communities of color, low-income communities, should be brought to the conversation when we talk about climate change, when we talk about resiliency. We're all resilient, right? We're here today. We know something about it. I talked to Ms. Wilson this morning. Where you at, Ms. Wilson? All right. Good to see you. We shared some stories. She talked about her aunt who raised her, and back in, you know, in the 50s in Baltimore. That's resiliency. We're passing that on to our children. I like that my friend Denali is here. Denari. Where is he? Okay, he's out back. He suffers from asthma, but he's here today. His mother takes him under her wing and says, let me show you how it's done at an early age. And I commend you on that. That's wonderful. And we're going to talk about a little bit of that this morning. But with President Obama's climate action plan front and center, and also the EPA's carbon pollution standards, front and center like never before, Green for All, we wanted to ask our folks, communities of color, low-income families, that's who we represent. We wanted to know, what do you think about climate change? Because people think we don't think a whole lot about it, but we do. And when we got the results on our national poll that we conducted with African Americans, with Latinos, with Asian Americans, the results were resounding. Yes, we do care. We do care about a healthy tomorrow, a healthier climate. And I want to share that with you this morning. 75% of minority voters pay attention to the new information that's being put out about climate change. 68% feel that it's an issue that we need to deal with right now, not for later. Issues like rising gas, we know about that, energy costs, along with health issues like asthma, toxic waste, we know about that, right? Water pollution, water shortages, and carbon pollution. These are the top problems that our communities think about when we talk about climate change. You're like, well, how are they connected? I'm going to tell you how they're connected. We talk to legislators on a regular basis. That's part of what I do. I go in there and I say, hey, you know, we're representing communities who are doing work on the ground. And they're like, show us these stories, show us the successes that are going on. Well, guess what? I don't need to look no further than right here with what the Green Army is doing, with what the local communities are doing right here in the New Orleans area. Give yourselves a round of applause. You are the ones on the front lines, taking a stand right here, right now where you live. You're speaking out against the harmful chemical odors that plague the St. Rose community. You're talking about the coal train lines being extended. You don't want that, and we don't want it either. Talking about schools being built in toxic areas. What? Oh my Lord. Your local efforts are making a wonderful impact right here where you live, but I'm here to tell you it goes beyond that. Your local efforts just rang out and resonate nationally and ultimately globally. At Green for All, we're fighting a good fight too. We recently hosted several focus groups. We're going around the country asking folks, what makes us resilient? Like I said before, we know about resiliency, don't we? We know how to make it out of no way. At least that's what my mama used to say. We know how to make it out of no way. We're not talking about just bouncing back from adversity. We're talking about leaning forward and how can we be survivors. And we want to hear from our folks because who knows it best than us? how to survive. We've been doing it all along. So President Obama's State, Local, and Tribal Leaders Task Force is something that he's assembled recently, and he wants to hear from us folks. He wants to know, what do you think can make us resilient as we look at climate change that's obviously getting worse? So we got together, we got groups, and we wanted to hear what we thought would be able to impact the change. And we got some wonderful information, a lot of it. We're presently compiling, and that report is going back to the President's task force next week. We also have 130 Green for All fellows stationed throughout like 74 cities in the country, just finding out and talking to local communities about climate solutions. But we can't do the work that we do without the work that you're doing right here. With the LA Bucket Brigade, the Green Army, and again, all you who are in this room, we hope to continue a collaborative conversation with you as we can find out at Green for All how we can be more helpful to you. As I mentioned before, your local efforts have a national and ultimately a global impact. Another way that you can make an impact is against carbon pollution standards. Those cards that are on your tables, if you haven't taken time to fill one out, if you would please take a moment and do so. The Environmental Protection Agency, they took a stand along with our president on June 2nd against carbon pollution. It is the #1 largest source of carbon pollution in the United States, and that's the pollution that's emitted from power plants. The proposal would reduce carbon pollution in the U.S. by 30% by year 2013. And you ask, well, how is this important, Kim? Well, it's important because 68% of African Americans live within 30 miles of a coal plant. One of the biggest causes of climate change. Is it any surprise then that 1 out of 6 African American children suffers from asthma? Or is it any surprise that our communities suffer the worst health effects, such as cancer, heart disease, and respiratory illnesses from pollution at high rates? So if you could take a moment and continue, along with what St. Rose did, they started filling out cards a couple of nights ago. Thank you so much for doing that. We want to continue that drumbeat here today as well. We'll make sure every one of those cards gets taken back to the EPA. In closing, our environment is more than just science and politics and economics. It's about people. I can't underscore that enough, the importance of you being here today. What you're doing on the local level is making a difference in combating climate change. It really is. But it's also making a difference in making a healthier community for our children and for our planet. Thank you.
Please fill out the cards, and then you all have a little basket on your table, and put the cards in that basket, please. And now we finally are at the point of the program where we get to hear from some of the people who are on the front lines of the Green Army. We are going to begin with the St. Rose community, the organization St. Rose Community One Voice, led by Mr. Keith Adams. Please note the 2 tables of people from St. Rose as well, outstanding to be recognized by the crowd. People from St. Charles Parish this morning. You know, the funny thing is I usually work with women. It's always women leading these fights. And now suddenly the general's involved and the men have come out of the woodwork, which is a great thing.
Hello, everybody. My name is Keith Adams. I'm from St. Rose. And, I'm sorry. I'm Keith Adams. I'm from St. Rose. And we've been having an ongoing problem with our next door neighbor. It's IMTT, and it's a Shell joint effort. Now, we've asked them several times what it is that they were doing that was causing this, and each time we did, we got a different answer. This has been going on since about June. I don't know what the EPA stand is right now, but okay, and DEQ too. But we haven't been getting the smell recently. Now, I've noticed these burn-offs. This is where they're burning off excess product most of the time. I was in Linden, New Jersey, and I worked on what they call a cogeneration plant. It actually takes that energy and uses it to make steam, turn generators, produce electricity for the plant. Environmental justice is something that's not just local. It's national, it's international. And we have to start someplace. And I think this is as good a place as any to start. We have technology that we don't have to have these odors. We don't have to have these chemicals released into the atmosphere. They have what they call scrubbers, which is basically using air and water to take any contaminants out of the air that's being released back into the atmosphere. These people, I don't know if they have them, if they're even aware of the technology, but they're definitely not using them. We've had cases of headaches, nausea, the vomiting, the diarrhea, throat, eyes, and nose burning. Now, they claim that this isn't harmful in small amounts. But the fact is that they have released this on us so many times until, we may as well have just been working in the plant. And we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be. We know what the short-term effects are because we experienced them. But as far as the long-term effects, we have no idea. And we have children involved in this, And most gases that are released are usually heavier than oxygen, which means they stay closer to the ground. Which means that the gases stay closer to the ground, which also means that the shorter you are, the more you're affected. So when you think about this, think about your children. Think about your children. Because I know for a fact there were times when I know I didn't smell it, but the little kid next door did. Our children have to play outside, and they have to be exposed to this. I don't think it's right. I don't think any of us here think it's right. We actually addressed our local government, and the final response that I got was that the problem was industrial. It was not governmental. These are the people who represent us. This is the guy who represents us right in our district, and he said, it's not governmental, it's industrial. Who controls the industry? Who determines what industries are allowed to do or not allowed to do if not our government? And when we have local officials and we call upon them and they just can't do anything about a situation, then we need to reconsider who we have in local government.
Yeah.
Now, we have power at the ballot. Well, we have the power of the ballot. And if we're not utilizing it, then we need to change. We need to be able to put people in office that will care about the people and who won't tell us it's not their problem. People who will stand up for us. It's a simple fact of the government forgetting who works for who. The government works for us. We don't work for the government. And that's been lost. And I'd like to tell you guys all, thank you very much for coming. And together we are strong.
Is this all right? Are we getting too much feedback? Is there kind of a hum, or is it? Okay, it's all right, all right. I'm now pleased to introduce Reverend Earl Williams from the Coalition United Against the Middle Belt Option, right across Carrollton. Come on.
First of all, we're very grateful for the Louisiana Bucket Brigade and also Lieutenant General Honore, not only for his efforts with the environment, but also his efforts in restoring New Orleans after Katrina. In October of last year, the residents of Hollygrove, we were shocked to find an article in the Times-Picayune stating that trains will be rerouted from Old Metairie through Hollygrove. We were not privy to what was going on, and as a result of it, initially we had a meeting. They had about 65 people in attendance. We had another meeting. There were about 165 people in attendance, including residents of Mid-City. What we learned was that the rerouting of the trains not only affected Hollygrove, but it affected Mid-City and other areas of New Orleans. And the reality is that this may be an effort that's coming soon to your neighborhood. It's no longer a Hollygrove Mid-City problem, but it's a problem for the city of New Orleans. And not only that, but in addition, we recently found out that the area of Shrewsbury, which is in Jefferson Parish, will also be affected. So I would suggest to those of you who are here, our fellow citizens, I'm going to ask Karen Ocker to please raise your hand. Karen, please stand up. Karen's our lead researcher. Whatever area you live in New Orleans, you may want to speak to Karen because the trains may be affecting your area. It also affects the area of Xavier and Gentilly. The third meeting we had was at Lafayette School. We had over 350 citizens in attendance, including representatives from the Louisiana Department of Transportation, the Federal Railroad Administration, and other organizations. And basically they put on a dog and pony show, providing information that was really not correct. Fortunately, we have the support of our district council member, Susan Gentry, who challenged them in their assertions that were really not correct about the rerouting of the railroads. And since that time, we also have the support of council member Jason Williams. I'm glad to see council member Nadine Ramsey in attendance, and we would also, we thank you for your attendance, but we would also solicit your support in our efforts to protect the citizens of New Orleans from this disastrous event, potentially disastrous event. Trying to wrap up, but this is an environmental justice issue. It's an issue of pollution. It's an issue of many environmental factors, because one of the things that we ascertained is that these trains will be emitting large what's called large particulates, which are carcinogenic. So it means that our children and our elderly will be exposed on a daily basis to emissions from trains and also emissions that are carcinogenic. I'd like to add as I wind up is that this is an issue for the citizens of New Orleans. We've been very impactful. The issue, even to the extent that it came up in the mayoral debate, and that was televised, and each candidate was asked, did they support or oppose rather the rerouting of the trains from Old Metairie through Hollygrove, and each of the mayoral candidates, including Mayor Landrieu, responded that they were opposed. But we realized that this is just the beginning of this effort. One of the things that is part of this is the National Environmental Policy Act, which requires that an environmental impact study be conducted to determine the potential adverse effects to the neighborhoods that may be affected by federal action. When we first started, the draft environmental impact study was supposed to be promulgated in the fall of this year, and since we gained momentum, it has been postponed to the spring of 2015. The reality is that even though it has been postponed, there are forces that are operating behind the scenes, even as we coalesce and advocate to make this happen. So the question is, are we going to allow a decision that will have a positive effect on the neighborhood in Metairie? Metairie, Old Metairie has made a decision, two decisions. Number one, they don't want the railroads, and number two, they will not consider mitigation. The problem in Old Metairie is that if you ever have the chance to travel on the Old Metairie Road, there's a constant backlog of traffic. And they have 17 crossings. Old Metairie was offered mitigation. The offer to them was that the trains would remain there, but that they would be elevated. The crossings would go down from 17 crosses to 3, and at those 3 crosses, they would be elevated so that it would alleviate the traffic problem. So the reality is that this problem can be mitigated in the community where it's already at. The question that we have to ask as citizens of New Orleans, not just Hollygrove, not just Mid-City, the citizens of New Orleans, are we going to allow a problem of an area that was built along the railroads to be exported to our community? And I think the answer is a resounding no. We will not allow this problem to be exported.
People who own the stuff that goes on those trains are smart, and they get it situated just perfectly where they want Hollygrove to start fighting with Metairie. And what we got to do is put our focus on the people who put the stuff on the trains, right? We don't need that coal. We want windmills, we want solar, right? Let's start phasing all that stuff out there. There are some alumni in the house from Walter Cohen. Let's please have them stand and be recognized. Now they may think they're going to build a school on a toxic dump, but I'm pretty sure y'all aren't going to let that happen. And Reverend Gordon is here. Oh, please come on, sir. We'd love to hear from you. Also know that after Reverend Gordon speaks, the general would like to hear from others in the room. We're going to have a section for about 10 or 15 minutes where others can come up and tell about what's happening in your neighborhood, give us some leadership following Reverend Gordon. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. I've been told that I have about 5 minutes and that when the facilitator stands up, I have about a minute left. I'm glad I only have one member of my church here this morning because they may do that tomorrow. Let me express my profound gratitude this morning to General Honore. I thank him and the Green Army, and I thank him for providing leadership on the front of environmental justice. We know General Honore is a stalwart soldier who fights on many battlefields, and we're thankful that he has chosen to fight on this battlefield. My gratitude also this morning goes to the organizers and the facilitators of this particular event, in particular the Louisiana Bucket Brigade. Thank you for taking the time to memorialize our Katrina victims, and we should never forget the souls that were disastrously and swiftly swept away from us. We should pledge vigorously to stem the tide of the waters that could repeat such disasters among us. I'm grateful this morning to my president, Mr. Jim Rady. I don't know if I should be grateful to him or not for giving me this assignment to speak on this occasion.
I'm grateful to speak as a graduate of Walter L. Corning Senior High School, a 1973 graduate of that school. I'm also a proud member of the Walter L. Corning Alumni Association. I speak to you today as the third member of my family to attend Walter L. Corning High School. I speak to you today as one of many from Uptown, New Orleans, who attended Corning High School, which was for us in our Uptown community a bastion of pride, hope, and higher learning. When the doors of Walter L. Corning Senior High School opened, we were admitted into the pristine halls of pedagogy, where we were taught and where we learned, and where we were provided with everything that we needed to grow and develop. My class, the class of 1973, was the first class to graduate from what we call the new Corning, the new school that was built. Therefore, no one can tell me that a new school can't be built on a site while students attend that school on those grounds or grounds nearby. Because we did it from 1970 to 1973. The present plan of the RSD, and we know who RSD is, that plan is suspect, to say the least. Why would RSD plan to build Corning School or any school on the Booker T. Washington site, the old Silver City dump? Who chose this site, this lowland of toxicity, this poisonous territory that will contribute to the future skulls and bones of our children? Who with any purity, sincerity, or true sense of community and human dignity would put children on top of toxins in the soil at levels higher than the risk-based standard for residential use? That several questions at that point are begging for an answer. Why would you build a school where you shouldn't build a house? Why build a place of learning on land that is not fit for living? Why put children on land by day where they shouldn't be at night? I repeat, the soil in this land is at levels that is higher than the risk-based standard for residential use. Who would turn over the soil on this kind of toxic ground in the midst of a residential area? You want us to fight in Iraq? You want us to fight ISIS? You want us to be valiant warriors in Afghanistan? We have a fight right here. This kind of exposure does not contribute to life. It can contribute to sure suffering and even death. We have a life or death fight right here. Skin, eye, nose, and throat irritation, headaches, nausea, vomiting, coughing, wheezing, and shortness of breath, damage to the central nervous system, damage to the brain, lungs, liver, and kidneys, cancer of the lungs and prostate, cancer of the stomach, spleen, skin, and pancreas, damage to a developing fetus, damage to the male and female reproductive system. Do we get a say-so? Is this any way to run a democracy? Or is this an RSD-ocracy? We must decide whether there will be cadmium or calculus, instrumental and vocal music or mercury, biology or barium, physical education or physical death. Will there be reading, writing, and arithmetic, or reading, writing, and arsenic? If it's going to be reading, writing, and arsenic, Our children will not need to identify and properly spell words or learn how to calculate or construct sentences that are grammatically correct, because the arsenic, the zinc, the cadmium, the lead, the copper, and the barium will short-circuit their productivity, and they will live limiting lives of unfulfilled possibilities and prosperity. The question is, how can these things be?
That's the question.
From the ground surface down to 15 feet, the soil on the Booker T. Washington site is contaminated with dangerous levels of toxic heavy metals. The RSD plans a partial, I repeat, a partial removal of the contaminated soil without effective protection for workers involved in the soil removal and the African American residents living near the Booker T. Washington School property. The RSD plans to remove only 2 feet of the contaminated soil, which would leave at least 13 feet of contaminated soil on the school property. This is unsafe for students, teachers, and staff. Finally, this must be stopped. It can be stopped. It is already in the process of being stopped. There was an article in the Times-Picayune on July the 30th of this year entitled, RSD Announces Pause on Plan to Build School on Toxic Dump. Now, that pause gives me pause, because a pause is temporary. A pause indicates to me that it's not the end. Somebody is regrouping. Somebody is catching their breath. Somebody is taking a second thought, and it's not an ending thought. It's a pause. And let me tell you the reason that they have taken this pause. Led by Mr. Raby, the Walter Corn Alumni Association filed a suit. The attorney, Ms. Monique Harden, is seated in the rear. Stand, Ms. Harden. Through Mr. Raby's research, it was discovered that the Booker T. Washington site is a former dump site. School should never have been built there in the 1940s. But a school was built there, and the people of that day, the African Americans of that day, were so glad, they were so happy to have a school until they accepted it. That was in the 1940s. This is 2014. We know better now, and we do better. And we don't have to accept in 2014 what our forebears accepted in the 1940s. Because of their research, the lawsuit was filed, and they've had a change of heart temporarily, but they have taken a pause. Had we done nothing, the dirty, poisonous dust would have already been kicked up, and a new school would just about be built at this point, had we done nothing. But we did something. Now, what can we do, and what must we do at this point? We as citizens can deal with the legacy and future of pollution in New Orleans. How? By political action. By political action. We must hold our representatives accountable for their actions. We cannot allow New Orleans to be another Ferguson where we don't go and vote, where we don't make them accountable to us. I understand through Ms. Harden that there is some information today, that there are some cards that can be filled out relative to the fact that, number one, no community should be silent when a plan is approved to dig up contaminated soil without health and safety protections. There are cards that we can fill out today relative to that. The second thing, and the last thing I say as I go to my seat, no city should approve building permits that put our children in harm's way. By filling out these cards today, we can request an ordinance preventing the building permits for a school or daycare center on a toxic site. We can flood our representatives with our cards and let them know that we took it yesterday, but today is a different day.
Maybe before we hit the open mic, maybe Councilwoman Ramsey, if we could hear from you at this point. We're delighted to have her. Please thank her for her time, and we're interested to hear your feedback on these important issues.
Green Army, all I can say is to put me up after Reverend Gordon. Not nice. I'm really honored to be here this morning. And I have to wonder why I'm up here with such an esteemed panel who is so knowledgeable and with such great community activists who have been on the streets and fighting these battles for such a very long time. It is truly an honor for me to be able to just speak with you. As on New Orleans City Council, I chair the Committee of Public Works, Transportation, and Environmental Issues. The issues that we're talking about today are so very important because we know that on the 9th anniversary of Katrina, as we honor the lives of those who were lost, and as we celebrate the great victories that we've done in rebuilding, we know that among people of color and low-income people, that some of the praises that have been heralded upon this city, that it has not been in equal shape for everybody. And so being able to talk this morning about issues of clean air and safe water and environmental issues and carcinogens is so close to my heart because as a judge I did have an opportunity to sit and handle cases that involved Reverend Gordon, actually a school being built upon a landfill. And I intend to continue to work with you, with Reverend Williams, to look at these issues. And believe it or not, everybody, there are two sides to the argument. Because when I attended a meeting at Reverend Gordon's church and I spoke to the RSD and told them that I would be keeping an eye on their project and that when they came before the city council that hard questions would be asked, I was approached by a gentleman later who told me that I was just so very wrong, that he had attended Booker T. Washington and there was nothing wrong with building a school upon a landfill, a dump site. So to me it was an easy situation to take a side on, but believe it or not, there are people out there with opposing views and we're going to have to listen. But I do want you to know that I will make a commitment to continue to work regarding the Middle Belt option and Cohen School. To our St. Rose neighbors, you're right up the street. I have no jurisdiction there. But I will continue to keep you in our thoughts and in my prayers. I know the effects that the plants have upon your community. And we have seen it in history in various communities where environmental impacts are placed in neighborhoods and communities where people are thought to be voiceless. And this great gathering this morning, I think, sends a very strong message that people of color and low-income people have a voice. They have people who are going to stand with them and that we're going to fight and we're going to make sure that our children, our elderly, and all of our citizens are protected. So General Honore, thank you. Thank you, GreenARMY. I've enjoyed it very much. I've taken good notes, and I will continue the dialogue on these conversations. Thank you.
The hallmark of the Green Army is the people. We don't have an address. We don't have a front office. We don't have a back office. We're unencumbered by logistics. Which means we can focus on ideas. Because the Green Army is not a conventional army. It's an insurgency. That takes the problem and turn them into the voice of the people to force a solution. First, through the law. And when it doesn't work in the courtroom, it has to work in the legislative body. So the things we talked about today have to go through to make democracy work. The democracy will work, but you, the people, have to give voice to that. The idea behind this next session is that there are issues we did not talk about today, and we're inviting people to line up here for the open mic. Tell us the issue. We'll add you to the list, and we need volunteers to be able to show up, do something, to see something and say something, to smell something and report something, and to do something. If it's a mess, take a picture, send it in. Make sure you call your parish, and you call the state, and you call the bucket brigade. They have an automated line, number. Make sure you get that number. So now is open mic time. We're going to spend about 10 minutes. You lined up, tell us your issue. We know some of these issues go back 50 years. We want to know what the problem is now. You got a minute. Talk.
Thank you, General. My name is KCK. My issue is on Tuesday, they're cutting off comments by the City Planning Commission on whether they should approve the new draft zoning ordinance. Now, the provisions of that ordinance says that people shouldn't be allowed to elevate their houses above their neighbors who might happen to have been inundated in Katrina 9 years ago. That's stupid. The general calls it, don't get stuck on stupid, that's stuck on stupid. So I want to ask all of you to email the City Planning Commission, cpcinfo@nola.gov, and tell them to put safety back in elevation so we don't get drowned again. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I live in the Hollygrove area, and I'm a person that loves to work in my yard and notice everything around in my yard. And I noticed that some of my plants, one side is dead and one side is alive. That's puzzling to me. There's something in the air that's telling one side of my plant and the other side is fine. I noticed on the levee in Jefferson Parish, they got a side that's dead and they got a side that's alive. And it's coming from the west. The west. So if something is killing one side of my plant and the other side is alive, what is it doing to me? Okay, there, and EPA is saying nothing is wrong. Our air is fine. Our air can't be fine if my plants are dying. But one side now, the other side is blooming beautifully, and the other side is dead. Come on now. We get these, this picture here always frightened me when I was a little girl. It always frightened me. Now, if this is going on in the West, where it's coming to? To the East, where we are. Canada had a fire. Canada had a big what? Forest fire. You know where it came to? New Orleans. It was in the news. The people was going where? To the hospitals because they couldn't breathe. And it came from where? Canada. Now, if it comes from Canada, where this is going? In our lungs. We say, oh, secondhand smoke kills. Okay. If secondhand smoke kills, Why you wake up in your house coughing and sneezing, runny eyes? Huh? Because it's coming from here. It's coming from here. I don't know who focusing on secondhand smoke, who funding secondhand smoke, but they're taking the focus off of this and putting it on secondhand smoke. It's not secondhand smoke, it's them. Thank you.
My name is Barbara Green. I'm from St. Rose, and I've been there for right at 30 years. And the problem that we are experiencing for the last couple of months, it hasn't been just 2 months. It has been for a lot of months, but it's just now coming to the fore. Maybe some years ago, maybe a year ago, I woke up about 2 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't breathe. Everybody, all my neighbors were asleep. I was sitting in my front room, and I was okay. I went in my bedroom, I started coughing, I couldn't breathe. I do sleep on sleep apnea. I never wondered, had no idea why I was having breathing problems, nausea, my equilibrium is off, I'm about to fall, numbness of my fingers, even my grandbabies, I have 5, all of them suffer with nausea, vomiting constantly in the doctor's office. I have confusion, nervousness. All of these things have been going on. My doctors have been trying to find out what's wrong. They can't. Come to find out from the test, it's all of these different poisons that Shell and IMTT is letting off. And what I want to say about this is, I live in the back door of Shell, and this plant was put there, and we in St. Rose had no idea that it was there. It's been there for 15 years. IMTT been there for many years. But what's so bad about it, they put it there, they didn't even ask us if they could put it there, so they sneaked this one in on us. So my problem is, I want them, I know they're not going to move it, but I need something done immediately, because when I went to St. Charles Hospital, he didn't put it on my records, but he said, ma'am, you're either going to have to move or the plant's going to have to go away. Your breathing problems will not stop until you get out of this condition. So, as I heard 30 days, 60 days, I hope and pray Bucket Brigade and General Honore and the help of all of you can help us lick this problem as quick as we can, because we are literally dying. My health has went from up here to on the ground in just a matter of years. And the whole community is, whether they know it or not. We've had so many people dying from cancer. Nobody knows why. We know now. It's Shell.
Good afternoon. My name is Gail Bertuzzi. I live in Gretna. I have lived on Madison Street for 36 years. I retired at the end of May, and since this problem has come to Gretna, this is not the retirement that I had expected. I had been finding coal trains coming to Gretna. There is a proposed ramp terminal to be built in Plaquemines Parish, and actually what's unique about the street that I live on is that I have railroad tracks right down the middle of my street. I always have. The railroad preceded me. However, when I first moved there, the train was actually an amusement. My children loved it. The train would pass once, maybe twice a week, maybe 10 cars, and they would run to the front of the house and delighted in seeing the train. The ownership of the railroad has changed hands several times in the 36 years, and over time they have just gotten to be terrible neighbors. They build the train in front of my house so that the train sits and we cannot get out of our driveways. And they back up the cars to build the trains, and it shakes the house. This train track is less than 40 feet from the front of my house. Now they're proposing to send uncovered coal cars coming down the middle of my street. It's going to go through Gretna. Actually, as it stands now, even without the coal trains, we're impacted in that the train keeps emergency vehicles from getting to our homes. I said we can't go to work, we can't go to appointments that we have. These coal trains are supposed to be 100 plus cars long. They are going to go through Gretna down Belle Chase Highway to Plaquemine Parish. But what scares me more, I know that no one's really concerned that Gail Bertuzzi has coal trains in front of her house, but what you should be concerned about is that the Ram terminal, the proposed Ram terminal, will be built alongside a major coastal restoration project. Now, I don't understand the sense of that. And I don't understand how this is happening. And I can't understand why more people are not getting upset about it. I think mostly it's because most people don't know. So I am so glad to have the opportunity to bring this to your attention. And